things rolling here. Okay, next one, I'll call the Port of Newport regular monthly commission meeting to order. As a reminder to those in the audience, if you'd like to speak to a specific agenda item, you're welcome to do so, but please fill out a form in the back. You'll have 5 minutes during the meeting. Otherwise, you'll have an opportunity for public comment at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end of the meeting. And we'll keep those to 3 minutes. So, following along with that, does anybody have any changes or additions they'd like to make to the agenda at this point? Not seeing anything. We will move into our first public comment period. So, if you'd like to make a comment, please state your name. You have 3 minutes to do so. Anyone? Yes.
Hello.
Excellent statement.
I was getting ready to take notes.
All right, nothing heard, then we'll move into the next section of the agenda here, which is the consent calendar. Has the commission had a chance to review everything on the consent calendar? Are there any suggestions or anything that anyone would like to remove from the consent calendar?
No.
Anybody? I sorted out an issue that I had before, so I think that's okay. So at this point then, I'll take a motion to accept the consent calendar as posted in our meeting packet.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Walter. Any other discussions? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Consent calendar motion passes. We will move into our next section, correspondence and presentation. So that would be Roy Kenyon, present, speaking about the request for stormwater drainage easement. Correct. Please.
I'm Roy Kenyon with Lincoln County Public Works, and unfortunately, my engineer, Steve Hall, who provided all of the paperwork, actually had vacation scheduled. I guess your meeting was moved to the week or something. And anyway, so I'm pinch hitting for him. I'm up to speed on the project, so there shouldn't be too much of a lapse here. What we're looking at is the Board of Commissioners has asked Public Works to create a parking lot directly across Bay Boulevard from the OSU Extension Building and now the Veterans Affairs Office. And the county purchased a lot there, and I don't off the top of my head remember who the previous owner was, but it's now Lincoln County. As part of the design process, of course, we have to take drainage into consideration. And unfortunately, in this area, we have kind of businesses and residences on both sides of us on road frontage. And directly across the Bay Boulevard, it's more or less uphill with a very shallow ditch. So we are fairly good at road maintenance. We still can figure out how to make water run uphill. So that leads us to the back of the lot. And we talked to Mr. Driver and Mrs. Grimstead about drainage easement across their property down to the bay. They gave us the nod, but we ran into some elevation issues. We felt that velocity was going to be a major concern dropping from the elevation of Bay Boulevard down to the edge of the bay. And so that kind of leads us into my ask for the Port of Newport. In your packet, starting on page 71, my Steve has provided his first letter to. There are some plan drawings here, but what I'd like to look at is page 73, which is the aerial. And unfortunately, after I looked at this, I realized that it's not entirely accurate. This was the first proposal, and you can see the faint outlines of parking stalls on the lot that we're going to be working on. And then directly, I guess that would be kind of west or southwest, you see a hash line or an area that runs more or less directly to the bay. That was when I was saying that was the original proposal. Well, when we decided that was not going to work, what the new proposal is, and I haven't figured out the drainage starts down the hill, and once it gets down to port property, it makes actually a 90-degree turn. What that allows us to do is diffuse energy at that 90-degree junction. There'll be a manhole there. That'll basically be... Yeah, see, this is...
That's page 80, right?
Um,
Oh, no, some of it's on page 80. Oh,
all right. But anyway, this actually shows the drainage plan and that 90-degree angle. There will be the manhole at the 90, and then where the actual outlet of that 12-inch culvert will be, there will be basically a settling pond or swale that will then diffuse the water once again. Steve has calculated on there that on the outlet, we're looking at 6 feet per second as far as velocity. Now, as far as quantity, he designed the system for a 100-year flood. I didn't see where he actually calculated gallons, but I do know that it was low enough that we didn't have to get, he checked with DEQ, we didn't have to get a stormwater permit for this system. It was below the threshold. And so what happens is the water, or the intention is to gather the water in the south-ish west corner, run it down across the driver property, make a 90, run it then onto the port property, let it come out at surface level, and then it's more or less a gradual grade that is extremely vegetated recovery. I was in there today looking, and it's ivy and blackberries. And with the amount of water, or the lack of amount of water, we don't believe there's going to be any erosion issues. It'll basically, it has about 120 feet or so that it'll run across the surface of the ground underneath vegetation and then enter into the bay. Kind of just on the west side of, I guess that's still the needle plant that's there.
Mm-hmm.
It would enter into bay just on the ridge side of that. And so what we're looking for is your permission to allow this to happen. We have our attorney is working on the language, waiting on an approval or a denial of this. And so we'd like your consideration on this evening. Do you have any questions?
That a quick one. Aaron, have you looked at this in terms of what this might do, or maybe between you guys, about potential sediment accumulation? You've inherited a storm drain from another municipality that's building.
There will be 3 spots along the system. The original catch basin that will be at parking lot level is going to be the first catch for sediment. Also, because if it's going to be used for a parking lot, it's going to be a paved area. We're going to put, I like to call them diapers, the socks, basically the collection system within the catch basin that will change out routinely. This parking lot will be part of the county facilities maintenance system, and so we actually have our own crew that goes around and maintains these things.
But I think we might be talking slightly different. I'm thinking about
the
sediment
outfall
itself moving. That's what's already there. It's going to change
the surface.
and move the sediment that's there into a different place that potentially could impact us.
Yeah, it's kind of permitting wise, it falls into a little bit of a gap there. We're not talking about sediment coming from the stormwater collected that you're collecting. We're talking about erosion factors.
Erosion beyond the outfall.
Right, and so that was one of the first things I brought up to Steve when he first came forward with this, and that was why he added to his design. He added that vault into it, and the way that he believes it's going to work is it's going to slow down the velocity of flow. Such, yes, I believe so, and
Yeah.
right, and between the vault that he's adding there and this improved basin out, or the improved outfall. He believes, I believe as well, that it's going to slow it down enough. Really, the only drop off that's going to matter here is the actual angle of that last, after the 90 degree. It's that last discharge there.
And that's going to be a fairly flat run. And
yeah.
And then that's well, the ground allows us to do that, but it's also somewhat by design. So you have a fairly steep drop from the first catch basin to the manhole, and then it makes a 90, and then it's almost, no, I'm not going to say dead flat, but it's pretty gradual. And so that's where basically everything is diffused. It becomes a slow-moving, I don't know, let's use the word stream because there's not going to be that much water. It's not that big of a parking lot, but like I said, we're gonna take all the energy out of it, and the area is heavily covered with ivy. I think that just the natural ground cover will go a long ways in making sure that nothing moves there. And it'll be something that we monitor, and as part of the easement, we buy into all the maintenance. And I think it's actually stated in the letter. Where Steve says that, we will accept all responsibilities for this easement.
Yeah, and so like I said, he added this at my request, and then as long as we get the easement, worded properly such that they are responsible for any sort of consequences from it, I think I'm comfortable with it myself.
How long is the riprap? Does the riprap start right after the manhole? Or how long is that?
Looks like about 15 feet, right?
Yeah.
After the actual end of the...
And how long is that after the right angle? That whole line?
Ooh, it's hard to read.
Manhole.
Boy, that's hard to read.
It's a big picture of
This one doesn't have a...
It doesn't have that.
Yeah, it doesn't have that one. That one. That's just a photo. So.
Oh, does it have the length here? Is that no?
No, let's see it.
I wish my eyes were there.
Where are those magnifying glasses when you need them? People laughed at us last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
And you say that's mostly blackberries?
That area is anything that is kind of in the shade. It's kind of a tree-covered knob. Anything that's in the shade is almost entirely ivy. Once you get out into the sunlight a little bit, then it's kind of a mix of blackberries and ivy.
But along that whole after the manhole?
Yeah, it's pretty thick. And what allows us to do that is there's actually kind of a gap in the ridge, and I don't know if that was naturally occurring. Somebody up at Troyer's said that at one time was some kind of a road or something.
That's what I'd heard too. Some
But-
kind of access road that took you
Yeah,
around.
and so because it was some kind of an old trail, it actually is kind of a gradual slope, and like I said, it's kind of notched into the ridge, and so it's somewhat protected from. It's not going to go. It's got banks on it. It's not going to. The water's not going to erode and change course or change channels or cut a different path.
Are there any, there's no homes there. The last homes would be north of that.
There are. There's a house right there next to Troy, and the driver is actually going to build a home. I plan to build a home on that back lot, the 2600. They're the ones that we're actually getting it. This home here is no longer there, but they plan on building a home here.
Right.
This is coming down. This is that old storage shed.
That's the sacred old storage shed.
Uh-oh, now you've done it.
That's a historic monument.
Is it? I could save some pieces. I can have
Maybe the
them.
basketball to the bathroom.
You can have that. I'll give that. Anyway, so this is a vacant lot, but will be a house at some point in time. This is
They won't have anything coming down through there ever. Any drainage from their own home.
well. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with their drainage. Their gutter water would have to go someplace. There with that house that is there or was there. I don't know where. They probably just let it run on the ground. that's not for me to say one way or the other, but.
But really, there's nothing crossing their lot line in this. I mean, you're coming-
Well, we're actually skimming across their lot here. And so we're getting a drainage easement from them at this point. And it
But
comes
nothing going north.
this way. No, the line comes from here down to this gap here in the trees and then comes across to here.
Is there any requirements for any treatment?
Treatment of the water? Not that I'm aware of.
None that I'm aware of either. It's a small enough square footage,
For the drainage area?
yeah, that they don't have to do any sort of stormwater treatment or filtration or anything. There's not enough water running off of it.
So it's transfer whole lot of West
Yes. Unfortunately, built a really nice facility with really large meeting rooms. And
There's nowhere to park.
No, there's just no place to park. And then we've added, like I said, Veterans Affairs there, which is, a few more vehicles. And so this is right now designed to be 21 cars.
Are you thinking of doing a crosswalk there?
Yes, we are. We're going to be doing a crosswalk. We're going to put in flashing beacons for the crossing, and we're also putting in a bus stop. So there will be so Newport or Lincoln County Transit will have a stop there. And we're also going to install lights for nighttime use. So it'll be well lighted because anymore most meetings are at night, and then during the winter it's pretty dark and gloomy. So it'll be a lighted parking lot with crosswalk and lighted crosswalk.
Page 77 shows that cross in the bus stop
Any other questions?
in the street lamp.
Thank you, guys.
Support it. What was your distance from the mean high water in the bay? 120 feet before it went into the bay? Or roughly, or something like that?
We have
Plenty far.
It's fair piece. One of those. Is this map?
It might.
It's not that, so as long as it's far enough where we don't have a necessary need for it to permit.
Yeah, we definitely. That was one of the things that I talked with Steve a lot about was permitting, and
He checked that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not. No, they're well above mean high water. Mean higher high water.
I can, here's the elevation. Oh, I don't know, he doesn't have me on.
Yeah, mean higher
I
high water.
can actually get that.
Well, that would be interesting just for future use. Sure. As long as on the county schedule of maintenance and Aaron has already gone through it, I'm good.
Yeah, we'll be solely responsible for the maintenance of the system. And I can give you, so you want elevation of
I'm just
or
curious.
the outlet of the actual pipe, or basically where the last featured, so the
Distance and elevation
distance and elevation.
would be a point of interest. Let's get to Aaron. I don't need to see it, but
Okay.
yes. So we
Yeah, no problem.
just make sure we're not missing a permit,
Oh, yeah.
which I'm sure you guys are probably on top of that, but and you're on top of that, so that's what's up.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. And this is this storage only draining the parking lot? There's no, there's a bunch of hills there, and it seems like water tends to find its way south, especially coming down that hill behind OSU. Yeah,
Nothing crosses a boulevard that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe at extreme high flows, you may get something that jumps the ditch coming down Vista. But from my experience, the road's sloped there enough, it never does make it all the way across Bay Boulevard. It kind of runs out in that one lane and then runs down that not very deep ditch.
But this is being designed just to drain this parking lot, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Correct. Anybody have any other questions?
I have a comment on the street lamps. There's a lot of homes on the hill. I live on a hill in town. And there's a couple of houses below us that, I don't know, they would have better, safer lighting for where they want to light with a hood on it. And
Yes.
so I just wondered if
These are going to be directional. Because
So it's
we
all-
actually had a concern with the house immediately to the east, and we talked to them about it before we ever even really started this process. We said, to make it safe, we really want to put a light in the corner here and discuss that with them. And now, well, we built a parking lot. I shouldn't say we. Steve designed it and somebody else built it, but the county built a parking lot east of the library, kind of right there behind the law offices.
Oh, yeah,
You can't see it very well, but it's fully lighted and everything is directional, and for the most part it is mostly contained to the parking lot.
So it's directional but not hooded.
It is directional by both. It's hooded and directional so that you can actually turn a light at angles to hit just the spots that you want it to. You don't get a lot of reflection back or to the side.
And it's the uphill thing, but
Yeah, right. Yeah, because like at the road department shop, we used to get complaints from people up in Campbell Tree about our lights shining out there because we would work 30, and so we learned over a long period of time that we really make sure that we control our light, and these are totally directional and adjustable. And if there is a complaint from somebody across the street or beside, yeah, we will adjust them as necessary.
are you going to have any security cameras or?
I have not heard any plans on security
I was
cameras,
just thinking
but
of the bus stop there.
I'm not going to say that it won't happen, but I have not heard that conversation.
Just curious.
Yeah, well, it's so easy now to put up cameras pretty much everywhere, but the problem is with the storage of the data. Yeah.
Right.
So, meaning,
I'm good. I'm good.
Terry, what do you need anything from the commission other than this is advisory?
Well, the commission has to approve the easement, so you have to,
So, yeah, so what all I really want is just a nod to go ahead. I'll have county legal counsel with the paperwork that will come back in front of you for your review.
and then you'll take a vote at that time.
Got it.
Yeah.
You take a look at it, hack it up however you want to hack it up, change it, we'll take it back to legal counsel. So we do it, and if it takes a couple laps, so be it. But we want to make sure that you are happy with the agreement and the language in the easement, and then once you get approved, then we'll take it to the board and they'll approve it.
And I think you're getting nods from us here, so.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, then I'll make a motion.
I don't think we need a motion at this point.
Just so forward.
Yeah, I think you have at least a fundamental agreement with us here to continue to move forward.
Okay.
And we'll look forward to any more formalization as
I
things
left a
develop.
couple business cards there. If later on something tonight can't sleep and all of a sudden you think of something.
And we'll also interface through Aaron as well. I think
Yeah.
the commission has
All right.
questions, and vice versa here. If there's any red
Absolutely.
flags, you'll pass it back. So
Because
appreciate it.
the counties are asking for a favor, we're willing to do whatever you want us to do and make that happen.
We'll remember that.
We got a bunch of projects that
Sarah, make sure that makes it into the minutes. Don't send
Oh, that's me, but I know it's me.
All right, unless there's anything else, I'd like to move on. The next item on our agenda here is
Thanks.
is item B, Commercial Fishing User Group Committee, Heatherman Chair.
Huh.
And
She said she would be here, so maybe something came up, and I've not checked my phone, so
yeah, I haven't heard anything yet, Sarah.
No, I haven't heard.
So she is not present at this point. So at this point, then I'd say we continue to move on, unless Sarah, you had anything
No, I
else.
got breaking news. I won't be at the meeting tonight. I mixed up the dates and I'm headed to DC. That's that.
Right.
Well,
Eric, can we ask Heather to just submit that report to us in writing so we can miss the last 2 months?
are you referring to the platform or the?
She's gonna present-
Okay, there's two. She was going to present the commercial fishing user group platform, and she was also going to present to you their recommendations on the rates. And we've talked through most of those, but I haven't seen that document from her. So yes, we will ask for that. We do need it for,
Yeah, so she was sent.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's continue to move on unless anyone has any other comments. Sorry, you. The next item on the agenda is the city of Newport's 4th of July fireworks display proposal. And I'm guessing.
Tamara is here to talk about that.
Yeah, so.
So, yeah, I wear lots of shirts, but tonight it's the Western display. Kind of a little bit of a background. I've been a volunteer firefighter in Lincoln County for almost 17 years. Currently, I volunteer with Newport Fire, and
I'm sorry to catch your first name.
Tamara
Bailey.
Bailey.
Tamara Bailey. Okay, thank you.
I took over as the lead pyrotechnician here for the Newport show a few years ago, and thankfully the city gave me a bigger budget last year, which is great. We put on a great show. Unfortunately, our poor, sad barge that we've been using for a number of years is rusting to the point that it's becoming unsafe. The hatches are not attached. I have pictures of it. It's a very sad thing. So in January, I started this process of either securing another barge or another location for the fireworks display. Technically, it's supposed to be the city doing this, but somehow I ended up with it. It just is what it is. We have exhausted a ridiculous amount of possibilities. We finally got, after I don't know how many emails and phone calls, myself and Chief Murphy have been making to NOAA, because we were hoping we could use a NOAA dock. One, the clearances are great. Nothing in the way, it's a giant concrete dock. They last week finally told us no, after 3 months of hounding them. We tried the sand pile behind NOAA. We don't have the clearances that we need with the fuel tanks there, the fueling station for the vessels, and then the other buildings around it. And NOAA is still in the fallout zone, and NOAA's not playing. What we are looking at, and we've tried the barge company that we've used in the past as well. They won't return phone calls, they don't return emails, they are impossible. And that's Bellinger Marine. Myself and Tom, who's one of the heads up at Western Display, have been trying to no avail with Bellinger as well. Trying to see if they had a different barge, if they could put a deck on the barge that we've been using, something so it can be a safe location for us to do a display. Nothing. We are now down to the point of coming to the port and finding out if we can use the far western side of the international terminal, because we're out of lots. We needed to actually get the permits in for the Coast Guard and everything else a while ago. And Heather, who is the president of Western Display, and I have basically been talking every day trying to get this ironed out. That is basically our last place to try to set this up to have a 4th of July fireworks display. We even hashed out the South Jetty. The fog rolls in so tight there in July, right to the bridge, it would be so questionable if it would even work or not. Just because of our archaic fog bank and the way it works. Western Display does this all over Washington and Oregon. They are a huge fireworks company. I do multiple shows a year. Last year I did Rose Festival, Chinook Winds Casino, Newport, Toledo, and the International Air Show. Those are the shows that I worked myself last year. This year I'm doing just as many, and I am now the lead for Wallports because I'm fixing their problem. This is a copy of just kind of a basic Google map fallout zone. I only made one because I wasn't sure how many people were going to be here or what questions I was going to have. What we are planning on doing is angling the fireworks. They come on the tubes. I don't know if you guys have seen how the 4th of July show was ever set up. The tubes are on pallets, just regular sized pallets. And we have the ability to angle them whichever direction we want. I'm going to use that far western edge there and angle them over the bay. Terry, myself, Chief Murphy, Heather, and Tom were out looking at the site.
And Aaron.
And Aaron, sorry, not Aaron. The other day. And we know that the vessels come and go frequently there. The end two vessels that are the far westernly, we'd have to bump them back just for the duration of the show. And then they can bump themselves right back into place. I just wouldn't be able to have them right there that close. Western, she sent me a copy of just kind of what their certificate of liability insurance looks like. They use the big Seattle Beach Seafarer and lots of other ones. Myself and my crew is held underneath their workers' comp liability, and all of that. Every one of my workers has to have their I-9, their possessor's form, which is the fireworks specific paperwork, and they get paid from Western, which puts them on Western's workers' compensation insurance and not on anyone else's.
Can you talk a little bit, Tamara, about so you have the area where you're actually launching the fireworks and then you barricade off an area, it's like a safety zone.
Yeah, it's a safety zone. It's called a fallout zone. The fallout zones are way bigger than needed because the way that fallout zone is, we're going to be angling everything. I don't know if it's better to stand back here. And everyone can see it. So, except for you gentlemen over on that side. So we're going to be angling things. We're going to be setting up the line here, and we're going to angle everything that way. Only stuff that's going to be falling this direction would be some of the little paper poofs that come out when the mortars are launched into the air. But due to regulations, that's what's considered the fallout zone, and it's real easy to cone that off and tape it off. Yes?
That's the fallout zone without any assumed prevailing wind, right?
Yes.
Which is in your favor.
It's in our favor.
By a
Yeah.
long shot that time of year.
Yeah, the winds that time of year in that area, they're in our favor by a long shot. And with us angling it over the bay, it also takes all of the, the big chunkies from the fireworks, which is all just paper mache. It's all completely biodegradable paper. And launches it out. There is a hydrant right there too, right on that corner. So I'm just gonna hook up a couple 1-inch, forestry lines. Makes it way easier than packing around the, there's a water can, which I'm just gonna use the unprofessional term, but the water cans that we normally use on the barge. This is going to be a much safer location in a lot of aspects. Over the years, I've gotten really tired of the commercial fishing fleet firing flares at me. That has become an issue.
In my own
They
part.
used to shoot shot.
Were you involved when it was at that site 7 years ago, 8 years ago?
No, I was not, and that wasn't the site. It
A
was.
little bit further.
It was closer to the LNG tank.
Okay.
Yeah, it was closer
Which
to the
just
LNG
makes a lot of
tank.
sense.
I got involved with the Newport show when they started doing an electronic show, because the shows that I've done, 90% of them are electronic or computer generated. And when the Newport show got switched to an electronic show, they asked me to help do the electronic show on the barge. And that's when I started doing the Newport show, and then I've taken over.
Okay, so at this point, you'd like the commission's endorsement for this?
Yes, and I think we need to do a
Special use permit. Well, yeah, we
And
can
that
do.
would have been, that will be handled by Heather.
Yeah, we can work out some of those details, but as far as other questions from the commission at this point?
Yeah. Please ask away, because I'm kind of coming into
Yeah.
this.
Did you check with Riverbend, they used to have a barge.
We have checked everywhere.
Did you check with Riverbend?
We have checked all through Toledo. We've tried every barge company. The ones that were up in Toledo and stuff have been sold to other companies. And yeah, we have tried. I've tried to no avail. Chief Murphy has tried. Heather and Tom have tried. And several of the other shows that Western Display does is off of barges. They've even, every one of them goes, oh yeah, call Billinger. Yay, great. We've tried.
So I had a question about what's left over afterwards. You know, one of the things that is really important for that whole facility is that it's very clean.
Yeah.
People stretch nets out, they do all kinds of stuff, and we make them clean up after.
Yeah, and we can
What
clean up
kind
after.
So I'm not as familiar, I'm always looking up, not necessarily at the ground. What's left over?
Usually what's left over is little pieces of paper, because when the shells go up and explode, the shells are held together literally by glue and paper, which is kind of scary, but that's what it is. It's explosives held together by glue and paper. So what's usually left is little chunks of paper, or little pieces of, it looks just like a grocery sack, and cardboard tubes, which some of the they call them the stars, come in for that. And those are sometimes left behind. Even like in our Lincoln City show, we go out the next morning and we're picking up junk off the beach.
So that's all, I mean, I think
Yeah.
the special use permit will reflect
Yeah.
the need to return
Yeah,
the
clean
spot.
up, yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
we talked
anybody have any other questions? Do we need, since we don't have a special use permit in front of us for this, at this point, is this another, essentially a fundamental acknowledgement and an agreement? And then,
Yeah, we just needed to know that the commission was on board, and we knew that we could do the special use permit, because we just had this conversation Friday.
Friday, yeah, we have
So-
a meeting Friday. I'm here today. Unfortunately, Chief Murphy was going to be here, but he's at the Chiefs Conference in Eastern Oregon. And Heather and Tom, Western Displays headquarters, is up in Canby.
So we just need to know that it's okay with you, so that these folks can take a breath and complete their planning, and we can do the special use permit and bring it to you for approval. And we talked about controlling the site and all those kinds of things, which we customarily do apparently. And
one thing I was thinking about was whether or not the user group would want to be at least consulted on any of this for any concerns associated, if there might be in that area.
I think-
I don't think that's a showstopper, but we should at least make sure the word gets out. That
Yeah, we could
we're
certainly
gonna have
do
to
that.
move boats if
well,
they're
we may
there.
not.
If they're there.
There's vessels there now, but in July.
July, there's not going to be nearly as many. I talked to Don about it, and that's up his alley, I think, to be able to.
And he can manage those, but we can certainly communicate to Heather and have her communicate to them about it.
And
think it just
I've
doesn't
worked with,
matter.
I believe it has gone there at the International Terminal in years past. Because last year my poor ladder to get down to my barge was bent, someone hit it with one of their vessels and it was bent inward. I couldn't get into the barge. So, little things like that, I've worked with him in the past and it's been great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you have again fundamental agreement within the commission here. Looks like you got a spot.
You've saved 4th of July.
Oh, you don't know how
We're
many
not
emails
gonna-
and phone calls and eggs this has been since January.
All right, so
That's
yeah.
all we needed today.
Wonderful, and then, should I have Heather?
You guys could work out those details
Yep.
between
Okay.
Karen and Jeff. Did you have something you wanted?
Yes.
I think everything's fine. Usually there aren't that many vessels there. The only exception would be is if something's going on with mothership and the ships go in and a bunch of boats come in. But even then, I think we'd be fine.
Okay.
I think we'd
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah, I would, I
And
mean,
getting the word out.
most of those are pretty, they're not dead in the water, they're just parked.
Yeah.
And so, we could bump up, have
Yeah,
a
it's a
scooch back for just a little bit of time.
Plus, I'll have a nice view.
They will have the best view
All right.
possible.
You can have Tamara call me, and we'll.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have Heather give you a call.
I mean, Tamara, have Heather call me. Sorry. Too many names.
Thank you.
Too many names.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.
I guess we want to communicate so nobody feels we got both that day.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I will have Heather get a hold of you because I'm leaving town in the morning.
I knew you were. Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item. And we have any items removed from the consent calendar, we'll move into amendment number 2 to the Berger ABAN contract.
Okay.
Terry, that's you, page 81.
That is me, page 81. So, as you know, we've been under contract since October 16th with Berger ABAM. We started out with basically a $60,000 contract to do the 5-year update to the strategic plan and capital facilities plan. And in March, on the 26th, you approved an amendment to the contract of $10,000 to add the finance plan back into the scope of work and to have them complete some additional, actually spend some additional time on the business and market analysis for the terminal. So we're at the point now where they need $1,772 to do the last few pieces and bring this to finalization. Because we asked them to bring Brian Winningham, the economist, to the open house that we had a month ago, and that ate up some of the additional money they had, and we've had additional revisions that we've asked them to work into the plan. And so it's all about time and effort for them. I mean, it's their time that's costing more money. So for them to summarize the feedback we received from the public and do those minor updates and wrap in. We got a history section updated from Angela today, and for them to wrap all those together and do any final editing and formatting, they're asking for $1,772. So I would ask for approval of that amendment number 2 to get that work done.
So that does include Angela's piece, or what you just said?
We just sent Angela's piece to them, but we will pay Angela for the time she spent on that piece.
But they're not going to incur any more cost of fitting her stuff into the...
No, that's that's wrapped into this, right? This will bring us to a final document that we will have on the 10th of May.
Okay.
Right.
Any other comments from anybody? No. Is this the final time we're going to see?
Yeah, this is the final, this brings us to a final document. This is it. Yeah.
We'll make any other changes ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, and the reason you're bringing this to us for approval is because it's in aggregate excess of, by being $71,000, you're adding.
Yeah, I can't approve that.
Yeah. Right. Well, we've already approved all the other parts of it. You're asking for $1,700, which
Right.
normally would be with your
But not when it's part of a, right. Yeah, I'm a rules girl. I'm not even on my last day. Am I gonna?
Just check. All right. You guys see the recommendation there? You would like to make a motion?
I make a motion to authorize interim general manager to execute the contract amendment number 2 with Berger ABAM for strategic planning services not to exceed $1,772.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda here is revised budget priorities for review, page 85.
So, I'm sorry. I'm so eager. Budget just is so energizing, isn't it, Becca? So at our last budget work session, you asked the staff to go back and reduce the capital projects and any other expenses to provide an ending fund balance at a minimum of $1.2 million. So we did that, And I just want to point out a couple of things that we did in that process. You'll notice that on page 85, the working capital, which is basically your beginning fund balance, has been increased by $200,000. That increase came as a result of Mark going back and really taking a detailed look at what came out of the audit documents, and he was using a projection when he had $2.250 million as a beginning fund balance. He was basing that on some of his original estimate work, and he said, you know, Terry, this is backed up by the auditor's report that we have more than that, or we will have more than that at the end of this year. And he said, I'm comfortable taking that up a couple $100,000. So
that's line 1, basically.
that's line 1, the working capital. So that gave us a running head start. We went through with a fine-tooth comb, and when I say we, I mean Becca. Went through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and Aaron had been out on family leave for a little bit, and so we pinned him down in the office, and we really went through line by line, particularly the expenses, but we also looked at revenues. And I think Mark discussed in the work session that he was kind of triangulating on how to project the most accurate revenues, because in the past we have a history of budgeting revenues that we seem to blow through every year and generate more than anticipated. And I mean, that sort of feels good, but it really isn't very helpful in the budgeting process to not be able to trust either your expense or your revenue numbers. And so he really went through and looked at things 2 or 3 different ways and fine-tuned some of those revenue numbers. And we had some modest increases in revenue as a result of that. We went through some of the more complex numbers that are sort of, I think there was one that we had some questions about, which was the contract on page 89, contract and support services, security and facilities, code enforcement, and contract and support services other. That's a big number. So we really went through that, and Becca broke it down. There's a lot of temp labor in there for South Beach, both in the RV office and in the operations area, and out at the international terminal for like the Squid Rush, and also at the commercial marina in the event that we would have a vacancy during a busy time of year, and we would want to have those resources to bring somebody on to bridge that. And so again, those are dollars that are spent only based on need, and in general, those are dollars that are spent to generate revenue in our revenue producing areas. And so Becca went through that hourly rates and really broke it down, and we feel confident that that number is a really solid number. Let's see what else we did. Oh, we removed a grant. So on page, where is that grant?
I think 80.
Is it 86? Sorry, I'm going back.
On the
At 89.
revenue side, it's on 86.
Yeah.
On the debit side, it's on 89.
Thank you, Jim. We had $200,000 plugged in for a Homeland Security grant to do this integrated video surveillance throughout the port. We've been kind of nickeling and diming it, and that was a grant that I think, Aaron, you went after last fiscal year. The problem is the deadline is in June, and we know we're not going to accomplish that at this point. And so I think in this fiscal year, we have to get going on that grant in February so that we're ready and we know that we can submit that grant and be successful for the 2021 fiscal year. In the meantime, we put in, so that's why that $200,000 came out both on the expense and revenue side. We put in some money for some cameras in locations where we really feel like we need some extra eyes out there, and at $500 a camera, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be part of this bigger system, but we need to get those cameras out there. And then we reduced in capital outlay. We reduced down to the bare nubbins in terms of, well, it's not the bare nubbins, it's a huge project, the Port Dyke 5 Pier project, which is on page 93. And so we have the $1.2 million in grants coming in under intergovernmental revenues at the top half of the page, and then the project construction at 2.4, indicating that our budget would contain 1.2 in expense dollars for that project. The next item you see, work in progress, ITSF. I don't know what ITSF stands for.
International Terminal
Terminal
Shipping Facility.
That's what it is. So that's the $10,000 we spend annually with the city to keep that building permit active on our 9 acres out there. And we talked about it at the last meeting about whether we should keep that permit in force, and we didn't hear get rid of it, or I don't know how you end the permit. What do? You just
Call the city and say we're.
you call the city and you say, yeah. So that's what you see there, unless we hear differently from you. That's what that $10,000 is. And then where are the pile? What page? They're in the construction fund. Dun, 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 dun. I'm not there yet. And then the $120,000, that is, gosh darn it, I didn't.
That's or 92.
Page 92. Thank you, Becca. Gosh, I had these numbers and in a week's time they've disappeared from my brain. So in the middle of the page, you'll see capital outlay out of the facilities maintenance and reserve fund. That's for replacing 6 pilings at Port Dock 5 and 7. And that's a $120,000 line item that we had that project in this year's fiscal, it's in this fiscal year budget. And Aaron opted not to do that project this year because he feels that if we do that in conjunction with the Port Dock 5 project, we'll save, could be $100,000, $40,000 in mobilization. So, so we rolled it to this year. I think those are the big changes. And so when you see, where's our ending? Where's our 1.2 balance at the end of the year? Okay, I'm going to find it. Bear with me. Bear with me. You know where that is, Becca? Well, there's a $1.2 million ending number in it. Is that?
That's for our unrestricted cash fund balance.
Oh, here it is. Yes, it's on page 90. I apologize for being so disorganized. Unappropriated ending fund balance down toward the bottom of the page, 1.209. That is, you gave us a 1.2 target. So,
And that follows the recommendation that Todd.
Correct.
We were looking for
Correct.
confirmation on that. You guys got it.
Yeah, Todd's recommendation that we should have an unrestricted fund balance or end of fund balance of $1.2 to $1.5 million.
Questions from the commission? We had a couple things real quick. Your estimates for the annex site on page 86, what was the reason for that to go, looks like it was 229, essentially 230K, or let's see, 17, 18, not the budget was 186, where the recommendation is 260, a 30 to 40% increase. Any particular reason for such a significant increase in that site?
It's super popular with folks, and I think as we raise rates we didn't raise those rates in the annex, and as we raise rates in the main RV park, people make a choice, an economic choice about where they want to stay.
So that was the rationale here. We're thinking if we raise rates over here, more people will go to the inn.
Well, we're seeing it. We're seeing it this fiscal year. Yeah,
So that was the motivation behind the
Yeah.
significant increase here.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you can go first, one thing after you're done.
Yeah. Let's see, just real quick. Let me see what my other notes. Now I'm all screwed up.
See how that happened? It just happens.
Front back thing.
I know. It's hard.
One of the things I wanted to throw out, since on page 88 we have professional fees, which is where we list out some of the specifics of known consultants outsourcing that we know we're going to need that we want to do for professional services. And one of the things I wanted to throw out to the commission here for us to think about, and I don't necessarily, I don't intend to be a big long discussion, but I thought I'd get your guys' take on it. One of the things that I think we still need to do has to do with the scheduling at the international terminal, developing of an ops type plan, or basically coming to an understanding with shipping industry, fishing industry, port, and the port itself. Basically get these groups together so that we can formalize a lot of the stuff that I think may be a little bit more discretionary. And I think, I'm not necessarily proposing to sort all that out now, but I feel like what would be beneficial to that group would be to bring in more of an outside mediator to help with that process.
I agree.
And I'm wondering if we should include at least a line item for that year so that we have some consideration. And I'll throw out a 10K number to have, like I said, a professional mediator work with individual groups and stakeholders, get people to the table so that we can ultimately hash something out that at least we're all aware of, we're understanding of, and that we can Carrie's.
Can I just, I agree 100%. That's the first listed priority in the strategic business plan, action plan, and they had a big number, and I said, no, bring that number down. But I mean, I think a lot of that work will be done this fiscal year, and I think we still have some professional services money that we could use to at least get that work started. And I think that the numbers in professional services, I guess I'm advocating for not adding to the professional services next fiscal year, because I feel like we have some funds to get that work going. And I think that the grant writing and the planning project manager for project mitigation and the ERP consultant numbers could move around a bit.
Well, I guess to your point, I suppose, I was almost advocating that I'm wondering if we, just like we have something that says audit and accounting or legal, more generic categories, we have generic categories, and then we have very specific communication consultant.
Yeah.
Is there, for lack of a better word, an other where we can, whether we pull some money out of one of those, just to give us a little more flexibility in some of those, so that it shows that we're being, I want to be responsive to both the strategic business plan as well as to anybody in sales that might be down deeper to our budget, to see that we're taking tangible, active steps to addressing a concern. And whether we, from a flexibility perspective in terms of dollars and cents, shuffle the deck chairs and create another category or something, or again, if the commission feels like it's worth highlighting it a little bit, albeit not a huge number like the strategic business plan is saying, but put in something.
Does that fit into the legal category? I know we decreased the legal category by quite a bit.
Well, yeah, we've only spent $11,000 year to date.
Out of 49.5.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a surplus there.
I think, we want to do some work on the tariff, update the tariff, and so that, we didn't want to totally shrink that down because we may use some attorney time on that.
I'm worried about our ability to get, with a lot of stuff going on between now, we're already May, June.
Yeah.
We've got 2 months. I don't know
Yeah.
how much a project like I was just talking about is going to get. You know,
Yeah,
I think that's information gathering period, and it's going to fall a lot on the next fiscal year to be early on, but
Yeah.
I think there's going to be definitely some.
well, I mean, I think you could take the communications line at 30, I'm sorry, the grant writing at 30 and the planning project manager at 10 and combine those and call it grants, projects, planning, and just have a $40,000 lump. Are you talking about just to give you that flexibility?
Yeah, I'm talking about whether we want to highlight it as a line item to
Okay.
show that we're acknowledging the strategic business plan and concerns and sales
Specifically for an IT.
or mediation,
Mediation.
professional mediation assistance. We don't necessarily have to say for NIT, but they.
But would professional mediation fit under legal? In
I
your
don't know if
mind?
it's necessary. I think legal has a connotation that's pretty
Yeah.
specific to our court's attorney. But, I mean, any other thoughts? One on whether or not you guys all, I mean, Terry and I are.
Yeah, I think we need to, that needs to happen. Yes, yes, yes. I'm in full
Jeff, on
support.
kind of maybe what are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure what it would look like. I see all the rationale, like what would it specifically look like? Mediation or ops plan. I've heard this debated since before I was on the commission. We need the ops plan first, and my question has always been, ops plan for what? Barger ships, logs, lumber, or something else. It would vary depending on, you're going to use a laydown, you're going to develop the 9 acres. However you use it, everything would look different. So how do you do an ops plan? What exactly would we be doing? But I agree with what you're saying. I just don't know. I have a hard time understanding what that would look like. But
Well, and I agree with that as well. And I think that's where I think with, a lot of projects that are going on right now still, that maybe having a dedicated or a person that would be focused on this a little bit more could help define what we're looking for, tell us what we don't know and what we want, and then help us get there from as objective a sense as they can is kind of where I'm thinking about. But, yeah.
Could we tease out some more money, or not just more money, but some of the money that's in that lump sum 174.2 into a mediation consultant, or this
Yeah.
call it out if that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying whether we add money or not. I'm looking at whether or not. I just want to give us flexibility in the budget or put a line item.
that makes sense.
Walter, any thoughts?
Put a line item and just take it off what we already have there, that we don't expand it.
Right.
Sure.
Why don't we change the planning project manager to NIT planning project manager?
I mean, like I said, I don't really.
Or NIT planning project, just to give it that special
That's fine.
focus and
That's fine.
not knowing, I mean, you can move money around within that category, obviously, so,
That's all.
it just identifies it and sends a signal
Yeah.
that we're going to invest time and money in that.
And if you guys want to stay within your 174 and shuffle some money around to offset any of that, up to you guys. But the total dollars can stay the same. But
Okay.
okay, is that Commissioner okay with that? Sure.
So planning project manager could have subtitles of NIT and South Beach and identify it more as what we want from a planning project manager, or instead of then you're just putting it just to NIT. That I don't know if that project planning manager would be included and say how we're going to maybe develop some of this unused land over here, or
I don't think we have enough resources there to expand it. I think
so. Yeah, I think that it is good to have something dedicated towards NIT.
Okay, we'll do that.
Great. And I don't think I've had any other things as I'm juggling. I think those were all I had on we're going to continue to include the director of finance. Changes in that, even though you've been talking about.
And then we actually I actually just found someone who's very interested in the position that Paula has worked with and has a lot of finance experience, so who knows where we'll end up with that.
That's all I have right now. Just so you have something.
Oh, nothing that we ever discussed. I'm good.
So, it was discussed with the Commercial Fisheries Users Group and the electrical upgrades at Fort Knox 5 and 7, and there was going to be a 10% increase, there's planned 10% increase in mortgage, and looking at a $41,000 bump from that 10% increase, and an additional $65,000 I believe was set aside, and those would be accumulated to, in 3 years, hopefully do the project. And so if we're rolling that back, do we need to kind of take a look at that and say, did we in some way kind of say, hey, we're going to set this aside, but if we're not really setting it aside, or are we setting it aside?
So, good question, because Aaron and I talked about that today. I realized that we had made a commitment in that meeting that the port was going to continue to set aside money to help defray the cost of that project. Now, remember, we have $150,000 set aside currently, and we were going to set aside $65,000 for the next 3 years, which would bring that total to $345,000, and we would pair that with the 3 years of increased mortgage charges, and that would be just about a 50-50 split on that project. And so when we went through the exercise, and I guess that was last week in the budget work session, we stripped all that out. And so Aaron and I talked about it today, and he has a suggested
So we've got
solution.
in the budget is that those 6 pilings that we at 120,000. That number was never adjusted from our original estimate to include the savings that we might be able to identify by doing that project basically at the same time as the Port Dock 5 Pier project. But if we do them at the same time, we ought to be able to save just about $40,000 because of mobilization fees being spread across both those projects. I worked through those numbers pretty carefully. I used a couple of different, I used bids for mobilization on this year's dredging at NOAA, which is not identical to this type of mobilization, but it's not dissimilar either. It's very, you got a barge involved, a crane, probably a tug, a couple of excavators for that, and then a pump, and so it's somewhat similar. And then the cost of steel pilings that I used from the projections for the Port Dock 5 Pier project. To identify what I think we would probably pay for driving those 6 pilings, and I think that we could probably take, like I said, $40,000. I think we can get that $120,000 project done for about $79,200. So that gives us, about $40,000 of the 65. So then we either need to identify 25 more, or gap it some other way, or whatever,
We could go back to the Commercial Fishing User Group and say, we made that commitment before we'd been through our whole budget process, and we just don't have that much, and we can set aside $40,000 a year, or $40,000 this first year.
So, past experience, I kind of thought that number was high, and my suggestion tonight was going to be, why don't we select 4 more pilings and do it for recovery next time? Because we always shoot more pilings out there than we can probably learn savings somewhere else.
Okay. So we would need to trim.
So we're
kind of out of projects. So what we would need to be doing then is we're going to have to trim. It's going to have to be services or
professional fees.
It was kind of a commitment that was made to the Commercial Fishermen User Group, and the fact that we maybe can't make that 65 points stronger to the fact that we don't have enough money to get those pedestals going, and that's why we're asking for the help from the fishermen. And so I think it's critical that we kick in as much as we can. I think they'd understand we can't do 65 because it was just before every line item looked like it was done, but think if we could get up to that 50, would be, say we are able to continue on the 50. But that mobilization, I mean, is an incredibly huge amount of money. If we mobilize, but I believe Aaron says there's 40,000 there to grab and still do the 6 pilings, correct?
Yeah, 6 pilings. But if we're talking about possibly doing more, then what we would have to say is we couldn't bank on that money to be in there. So we would need to find that money from someplace else. We'd have to trim.
So let me draw your attention to page 90. On line 20, we have contingency there that we haven't used, at least in the last 2 years, and we don't have any assumption we're going to use that $150,000 that's budgeted this year. So we knocked that down to $75,000 in our cost cutting. You had said take it down to 100, so we took another 25 off. I almost feel like we could eliminate that contingency because we build contingency into any project that we contract for. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Couldn't we use unrestricted cash funds for contingency?
If you ended up in that jam and you were that tight and you didn't, if you were spending every other penny, yes, absolutely.
It's sort of like 6-1,
Yeah.
6 and 2 3s here.
Yeah. I mean, we could take that down to 15 or 10,000. We could take it down to 10,000 and you got your 65 right there.
I agree with Sarah. I'd sure like to see that 65 commitment stay.
Oh, I think Aaron feels strongly about that as well, and I do. And if we can do more pilings in that other project with the 120, that'd be great too.
Right. I agree with Paul on that.
We just don't have a history of utilizing that contingency, and we've got a couple other small pots of contingency, and we don't have it's just not a history that we have of using that.
Is everybody cool with? Yeah. Anybody have any agree with that, Jim?
No, I agree.
Walter?
I just say, we should watch out about putting all of our contingency funds down to 0 or 1.2 is already down at the very minimum of what Don suggested. So if we start zeroing out all of our contingency funds, it's a dangerous place to go to also.
There's still
Well, I would say why don't you guys do that in the interest of developing this budget, and when we have our budget committee hearings, we can get their take on it as well.
So we'll take that one down to $10,000.
Sure.
You got that, Becca?
I got that.
Okay.
I saw other contingency, like there's a contingency for 10,000 facility maintenance reserve fund.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And the projects are built in with contingencies.
Good point, Jeff. Thank you for that.
Anybody else? I think that's reasonable time of the game.
Any other comments at this point on budget? Okay, you guys have a little more direction.
Perfect.
Thank you again for all your work on this. I'm going to go on to the next item on the agenda here. So I asked Carrie to throw this on the agenda here. Again, give the public an opportunity for any more feedback, comments. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this necessarily. Carrie, do you want to brief us on the commission's or the time scale on any other comments on rates so everybody, the public is aware?
Well, rates as they are now make up the basis for our revenue projections. So we really need to know from the commission if this is where we're going to land with rates, not to say that when we have the budget committee meetings that there, wouldn't be some further conversation there, but just for the purpose of having a proposed budget to put before the budget committee, these proposed rates are what we're basing that proposed budget on. So we're kind of at that point.
Do anybody have any, again, we'll have other discussions, but anybody have any preliminary comments on the rates at this point?
Just the tiny little ones for the mortgage for linear going 15 and 15 on a daily and calendar month, and it still reads 15.8.
It's probably, that 15.8 is probably a adjustment due to the, get it,
To being $11 instead of being like 10.78.
And thank you for rounding those. I don't think
we can have round numbers in the dollar column or round percentage numbers, but you can't have both most of the
I
time.
think people appreciate paying $11 rather than $10.
Yeah.
One question. So it says on the third line, whereas the Port Commission last adjusted rates and fees, June 11th, 2018. So once the resolution is made, when do the rate increases go into effect?
Should be, that's on the first of the fiscal year. Except for,
July 1st.
except for the ones that happen over here, because we stagger those because of the busy time of the year for them to try and change. Over here, I mean South Beach, to try and change rates in the middle of the summer for them would be very difficult. So it's October 1st, I believe.
So it's always done pretty much at the start of the fiscal year.
That's right.
when they start.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Another really small question. The cost for launch fees for resident seniors on page 106. Are we, I don't think we raised that last year. Did we recall? I'm just.
I don't know if we touched that last year.
Page 106. I don't know, I think I made a comment last time that I'm just thinking that I guess it's I guess is 5250 a 5% increase? It says NA written.
Yeah, I think the NA is an error.
Is what?
I think the NA is just an error. I think that should be 5%.
I don't know. I guess I've always felt like resident seniors kind of deserve as much of a break as anything in terms of not necessarily raising it, but we haven't raised it in a few years.
I remember we added the military veterans, disabled, retired, or active duty.
Yeah, same kind of deal. I don't know. I'd be okay just leaving it flat, to be honest with you, and not raising it at all for either one of those.
For residents, military veterans,
Yeah.
B and E. I kind of like that.
The downward slopes is a good thing. Good idea.
I don't think that'd be a huge dramatic revenue shift in you guys' mathematical calculations, but I mean, unless anybody here has any real big objections, I just assume see those flat. Cool. That's the only comment I have.
I mean, that doesn't. I think the budget numbers.
No, we just, Mark will recalculate.
Okay, any other comments on the rates? Let's keep moving. We go into new business. Page 113, Road House of Spirits lease amendment.
So Dharma Tam, who's the new president at Rogue, approached me about the potential to create a seasonal beer garden at the House of Spirits, which is you can't see it with the blinds because of the sun, but it's adjacent to some restroom facilities right at the top of the marina, and it's a nice little space, and it has a dead-on view of the bridge and the marina, and it's just beautiful, and it would be a lovely place to sit and have a beverage, and you could have your dog, and so we talked through sort of how we might facilitate that, and came up with an idea that let's do a sort of test of concept over the summer season this year without a huge investment, and so that Rogue could kind of test and see if it made, if it was feasible to have that kind of operation, and then make a larger investment in the future in some kind of wind block and sort of make a designated area. And so this amendment is just a 6-month amendment to that lease that would allow them to put picnic tables on the grass areas on either side of the walkway that's just directly west, sort of behind the west side of that building, which is all windows, and they would take one of those windows out and put in an operable window, so they'd be able to have a little serving, sort of just a little counter that they would build on the outside, and so you would just walk up to the window and order your beer because the bar backs up to that window and sit in that area. Of course, Rogue has to follow all the OLCC regulations and in terms of monitoring and service standards related to alcohol consumption, which they will do, and they will be responsible for mowing the grass that's under the area where they will be placing picnic tables and, you know, just keeping the area tidy. And they're responsible for having visual, having a visual on all the patrons in that area so that they can monitor and make sure that people aren't giving beers to 16-year-olds or whatever. And so this is just like I said, a test of concept, and it's only amending that lease for the 6-month period, and then at the end of that time period, there'll be a discussion about whether they want a broader amendment that would include some improvements to make a formalized space and what that might look like, and you know, whether there'd be fees involved in that or not would just depend on that negotiation. So this doesn't include any new revenue to the port. It's just testing to see if this is an amenity that marina users and RV users and general public that are out and about are interested in patronizing. So I think it's a great idea. There aren't a lot of places in Newport where you can sit outside and have a view like that, and I think it's an awesome idea that I support giving it a go.
Makes me thirsty.
Any initial thoughts? Walter?
I got a couple, but we might need to talk with Chris at the Marina Store, because he has a sole rig to sell food and beverages on the marina, so I don't know how there's going to be a conflict.
Well, but they're selling food and beverages at that facility already. Are you talking about outdoors?
Yeah, I would just check with this
Huh.
because he's done that before.
Huh.
When we've had the internet tournament, we had to make sure that we could have the people cooking hot dogs and hamburgers there. So that was part of this lease. Are they allowed smoking?
We haven't discussed that, but we can certainly put do we want to make that a non-smoking area, or what's the?
I would just worry about what people would be smoking there and that would be this ordinances.
Well, we would worry about that anywhere anybody would smoke on our property.
But there might be some confusion if they allow smoking there. I just want to make that sure that would be
So what do you want to limit?
That's going to be an OLCC issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, as far as the food
Just have rule.
you're going to have it's kind of an extension of the building, really,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you have a pass-through window, so it's not like it's a new something.
Yeah.
Yeah, extension of premise.
And there's actually 2 tables where I personally have sat and had beverages and had food from that location quite a few times. So
I mean, it's not new.
I supported, figure out what the concerns
Yeah, we'll
are
check.
with the vendor over there, but sure, I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
his lease. Give me.
I know he's got that in there.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I never really equated this.
parking.
Uh-huh.
When we have a busy Halloween weekend, busy dinner weekends, what's it going to be for?
I don't know that this is going to draw people who aren't already here.
Okay.
I don't see this drawing hundred. I mean, I think it's really a built-in audience here, and it will be a tremendous amenity for the RV park because it's just right there. I don't know. I think there's on an average day there's plenty of parking, and I think if it's busy, I don't think that the halibut folks are going to lose out to the beer drinking folks.
No, if I may, quick,
Yeah.
you're not gonna open this place till 11 o'clock in the morning. You're
Right.
having fishermen to be here already.
Yeah, it's open from 11 to 8.
Hopefully they'll come back.
Yeah, they'll be back in and getting ready to
Have a beer.
enjoy the afternoon
Yeah.
and the evening. One of the other things too is that you mentioned this is a sort of a proof of concept, kind of
Yeah.
short time period. Maybe some of these questions get answered during that time.
Right, that's part of the shakedown. Yeah.
Another thing was just basically the people on Port Coffee, they use the cleaning stations over here on the other side. I was making sure that they're going to be able to, it's not going to be so busy there that they're not going to be able to get.
We were very clear about the walkway must stay clear and that is, we can't block it or fence it off in any way. And so, yeah, that's the plan. And if that, if we start to have complaints and issues, then we have conversations and we make sure that is that everybody can use it, because we emphasize that this is a public facility and that's a public access walkway. And yeah.
I guess I had a little bit of a stick in the mud kind of question about, we're essentially adding 950 square feet to the lease for nothing.
For 6 months.
6 months.
Right.
In the middle of summer. Again, I think we want to all do things great, but we also we need to look out for the best interest of the port as well. And I start to get a little worried if we expand something like this at no cost, somebody else going to come in and say, well, I'd like 6 months of proof of concept for something as well at no cost, like our seaweed friends or anyone else. 950 square feet of sort of the prime real estate is prime real estate. And I get it. If it works, which means it's financially beneficial, the port doesn't gain anything from that, except maybe we can amend the lease later. And you see, I guess that's what my point is. Like, there might be some dollars and cents here to be made that I don't know if we as a commission want to give away anything, or at least I'll have that discussion with people. Like I said, I don't want to be a stick in the mud. I like a beer as much as anybody. However, it is an increase of almost 1,000 square feet on a lease at no cost for 6 months. So I'll throw it out there if the commission's comfortable with that.
I think on a case-by-case issue or a situation like this, or with our second biggest leaseholder, second to NOAA, I think there's some leeway. They've been a leaseholder since, what year? 92. 92. 6 months. What would we gain out of this experiment anyway? If we would ask for more money, does that mean that we have to put a wind block in or add some stuff to Aaron's plate versus them buying tables and putting them out there and maintaining the ground?
Well, there might be even another approach to it that, one of the things that goes hand in hand with beer drinking is restrooms and things like that. Maybe there's an opportunity for, some maintenance or something that we could do to one of our facilities, and as a sort of quid pro quo kind of thing that doesn't necessarily get into dollars and cents per se, but might be mutually beneficial to the enterprise, if you will. Aaron, does anything jump out at you, or is that even I'm thinking maybe the restroom complex, is there anything work? I know we've had the Jobs Corps folks working down there. Is there siding? Is there, something that might...
We just did the siding over there. Of course, that's part, they leased that.
That's
at
part of
least
the lease.
half of that building anyhow. But just did the siding. We're getting ready, painting the building is in the budget for this coming fiscal year. In the long run, all of those restrooms over there are going to need new fixtures, and they're getting old. Those are all things that need to get done.
I guess that's where I'm going. Is maybe there's an opportunity here where we can, make it a proof of concept without getting into legal lease adjustments too much.
What kind of figure are you thinking for 300 square feet for 6 months?
It's 650 and 300, so it's 950.
Oh, all right.
Right. And I don't know that answer either necessarily, but
Yeah, we don't have a standard fee.
Like I said, it's a great idea.
What is it being used for now?
Walking dogs.
Walking dogs. Well, we don't make money on walking dogs. So I have a tendency to think that, talking about the seaweed guys, this is a tried and true business plan, long-term lessee, and, somebody who's looking to maybe open a new business to get started is thinking way beyond 6 months. I don't think anyone's going to want to try seaweed for 6 months or try something that would take a lot of build out or things, and it's just being used to walk dogs. I think that it could, in the end, we would learn a lot about other things with some of the, because I fished out of here plenty myself, and I always thought, man, that when you're come in at 11 o'clock and you've caught all your halibut and you're just feeling like a queen, and you want to hang out here a little bit more, maybe there'll be some music somewhere or some outdoor venue. So I think this kind of opens the door to maybe see how it works for Rogue, and maybe we'd find something over here that we could build a little amphitheater and have little concerts. I don't know, I think it's a good run to see what...
I hear Jimmy Buffett coming.
It's Jimmy Buffett. But I see no harm in the freebie on this one, I guess. That's just my thoughts.
Anybody else? Yeah, well.
Have you talked with anybody on A or B doc or the boards or anything?
On the what?
On A or B doc, has anybody talked with people on there about the yearly board?
Not at this juncture.
And that's, if there, we have some little boards out there on A and B doc.
Yes, yeah, we do.
That might be the dog walking area. I'm just saying, that we do make money off the dog walking if they're going to mortgage. Yearly mortgage. So hopefully we clean up after they're in those. We hate to spring this on them. We give a lot of users a lot of it. And so we want to make decisions like this. So
Yeah.
we should even see dog.
I think we'd let everybody in the marina know
Yeah.
what's going on.
All right, so it doesn't sound like there's any justification or appetite for pursuing anything other than just a gratis addition of this at this point to the report.
On year one, I think.
Just so there's going to be no improvements, no construction out there.
They're just taking one window out, and
on the other side during the grass.
no, it's just that's part of the 6 month deal is they're buying tables to put out there, and actually Keith doesn't have to mow those 2 strips of lawn anymore because Rogue is going to take care of that.
Is there? I didn't notice anywhere in the lease, maybe I missed it, that just says after 6 months, if we decide not to pursue anything with this, that the property is returned to the same dog walkability condition it was before. I could have missed it, but there should be something that states that it's returned to the same condition that it was in when it started.
I'll talk to Pete about adding something.
Any other thoughts on this before we?
Just that we should keep tabs on how things go over the 6 months so that we can say, well, here's how things went and make a decision from there going forward.
All right, then I need a motion to modify their lease.
I recommend a motion to authorize the interim general manager to execute a contract amendment with the Urban Brewing Company to operate a beer garden on the west side of the House of Spirits for 6 months.
Second. Any other discussions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up
You're up.
on the agenda here is the Skyline Sheet Metal.
Skyline Sheet Metal is a subcontractor, Anderson Construction, and they're interested. They need space over here during the construction of this new building at the on the OSU area. So they approached me about leasing a part of the old cherry plant for that purpose. I talked with them and negotiated with them a bit, and what they have, what they think is agreeable is basically a $2,100 a month lease rate. Be just under, it'd be a 6-month lease for this. And plus, they would do some tenant improvements. I spoke before about some framing that's going bad in that. This is building. I label them now. So it's building C, which is the one over on the corner. There is a large garage door that doesn't have a garage door on it, and then right next to it is a regular size door. The framing in between those two has been busted off of the foundation. It got hit by a forklift or something at some point. So they're going to repair all that, put a new curb in there, and lease the outdoor space that's shown in that diagram that I attached. And part of Building A, which is where Jim Durkee's office is. And I've talked with Jim. He's fine with it. They're not going to be doing any kind of work inside the building. They're just using this as office space and storage space. So we would get from this, like I said, $2,100 a month and some tenant improvements out of it. And we would leave that other patch that you see on page, what page is this? 128. So the northwest corner of that property is still open. We've got another company that's been talking with us about possibly coming in there for some aquaculture work. A lot of his operation is still proprietary, and he's not ready to divulge to the public what his plans might be. But so we have the potential on this property to, increase our. We're not really bringing any revenue across it right now. So in the next year, we could possibly improve our standing there and get some tenant improvements out of it. So I would recommend motion to authorize the GM to enter into a lease with Skyline Sheet Metal under the terms of the lease. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Is it really for 6 months? Because the term isn't 6 months.
That's right. Part of this is because I was out on family leave, and so getting this done on time was difficult. So it's for about five months and a half is what it is. So they're prorated.
Okay. And then, do you have the total square footage? And then, again, how did you arrive at the $2,100 a month?
So I don't know if I did not put the total square footage in here, then I don't have it readily. I don't have it at my fingertips right now. The way that I got to that $2,100 is I looked at what Anderson is leasing what Anderson is leasing that lot for, and I considered their willingness to rent it at that rate, how eager they were to get it at that rate. I looked at the overall. We haven't had this property appraised. We've had some real estate agents look at it and tell us what it's worth in general. And then weigh that against other potential tenants that we have on the place as it is, and the fact that it's a 6-month lease, so it's a much shorter term with no option to renew on it. And then the other consideration here is utility use, and I mentioned that in here as well. Utility use, we don't have the place isn't set up to be metered individually. So if they cause our utilities to spike more than 5%, we're going to just pass that straight through. That additional utility cost is going to be passed straight through to them. They'll be invoiced for it. So that's how I generally set that up.
So the $2,100 is equivalent to a similar rate to what you're charging them already for a different.
No, this is too. So that's
why I'm trying to get to per square foot, like what was the common denominator here someplace.
So I don't have the square footage numbers on my off the top of my head, but basically Anderson is getting that other lot cheaper than this, and they were very eager to. That was fine with them. These guys were reluctant. It was hard to get them into here at this rate, but you know.
It seems like a pretty nice option for them right next to the construction site.
Yeah. But they also, I could push the rate up higher, but they weren't willing to accept those terms. I tried to get that out of them, but they weren't going to sign at that rate. So we either say, No, you can't lease at this rate, or we accept those terms, because that's where
I'm just trying to get an idea how you got to 2,100 number. So I got it. Do you have any other thoughts, questions?
Good with it.
What would, do you know an estimate of what the improvements are going to be putting on the buildings?
I think it's going to be probably in the realm of about $6,000 or so.
And they're fixing it, or?
Yeah, they are, and they're contractors themselves. So
So we got a nice little concrete curb and all of that tightened up.
yeah.
Any other sheet metal jobs we got going around here?
We can probably get some. I don't doubt that. But basically, this is just a bunch of lay down space for them. So
Okay, anybody have any more comments? Okay, you guys know what I need.
I'll make a motion to authorize the GM to enter into a lease with Skyline Sheet Metal under the terms negotiated in the lease.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Anybody have any other comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thanks again. Let's keep going to the contract for asphalt at NIT Gear Storage.
this was one that originally was in my list for next year. We had some room in the budget left this year, so I went ahead and put this in there. But this is, as you'll see on the back side of that page, that strip that goes behind our building at the terminal and along that, the footing of the hill adjacent to the Bay Road. So what's back there right now is there's a bunch of uncompacted gravel, and it causes us problems getting the forklifts in and out. We're getting ready to move a bunch of gear around because we got to turn that lease back to Rondis, and the idea here is that we get that strip of asphalt done. It's less than what's required for stormwater permitting, but we've at least got a strip of asphalt back there where we can set stuff and we can run forklifts and not have any problems. With the rates that we're going to on storage, I had passed this before in other reports, but we basically, conservatively speaking, this will be paid for in just about 2.4 years, I think is what it works out to be. And that depends on how tight. If we pack stuff in there tighter, it would pay for itself even faster than that. So, like I said, that's I've got the visual represented there, and there is room in the current fiscal year's budget to accomplish this. So we got this. This is quoted work. We got one. I still need to get a couple more quotes to actually, if it's approved for us to actually do it. I still got to get some more of those, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on it.
Thoughts? Initial thoughts? Yeah, well,
Is Rondis going to take all the property back, or just part of it?
The gear storage area is just what they're getting ready to roll back right now. So
The entire
yeah,
The end
I
of
guess it's
June.
2.3 or 2.5 acres.
and is that, early on in the discussions, there was a lot of discussion about working with the port on storage needs. And is this an absolute line in the sand that Rondis has said, clear your stuff off of here, we're taking this entire property back, and there's no room for any storage on it?
No, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. I want to be clear about this. This is a recommendation that I'm making. This is not, and I'll be happy to outline all my reasons for it, but they're not forcing, they would be happy to go ahead and continue leasing us that space, but they want to shave off our revenue from it. They want to capture a percentage of our revenue coming in from it. So basically, we would be paying them to use that space. I believe that it's better for us to take that money and make property improvements on our property that we got to make anyway. Invest that money back into some asphalt and keep that revenue for ourselves instead of giving it to somebody else to store stuff that we actually have less control over than at that point anyway. So it's basically the difference between, if you get, let's say with your employer you had a housing stipend or something like that. You take the housing stipend and pay for your own house instead of passing it through to somebody else. You can't benefit from it. So it's the same thing here. I think we should retain that revenue and sink it back into our own property, basically.
actually going to ask us to manage it for them. So how did it go from them taking our cut of the pie and managing it for free to them asking us to manage it for them? Because they don't have the equipment, they don't have the stuff to move all that equipment around.
Manage what for them?
They would hire us to manage it for them, the storage area.
I never
got that.
They never said that.
So if you got that from them,
One of the ideas for here is that if they took it over, that they would still want us to manage it for them because they did not have the time or the manpower to run this area as a storage facility.
well,
And I don't.
was that an idea from long back or something recently or in the last few weeks or?
In the past. And I mean, last maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, that was from some of the discussion with Evan. So I mean, I don't see how it could go from them saying that we need to lease it back from them because if they're going to use it, I can see that. But if they're going to still want to use it for storage, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the manpower to manage it as a storage facility. So that was one of the things we were looking at to do for them was we would manage it for them and then bill them for it.
I see, and that's so I floated that idea to them no less than about 9 months to a year ago. I said, even when they were talking about the ICE situation,
right.
I said, if you need some help running the things out, let us know because they're at that time, like the way that I represent, I said, you guys aren't really in the hiring and firing business right now. You don't have personnel. You don't have a lot of this other stuff, and they never followed. They never took me up on that. I also offered. Like I said, the idea of us managing that for them was never presented to us as an option. It was, we would like to get a traditional lease rate out of that in the form of a significant percentage of your revenue. And so the choice is, do we want to lose that revenue to the port and give that to them, and just so we can keep storing this stuff, or keep that revenue for us, invest it in the property, and put it on our own backyard? And I figured it was better. And when you think about their angle of it too, I talked to the tax assessor. This is $11,000 a year in tax savings that we're giving him just on this 2 acres. If you go to the entire McLean Point, I think it's someplace around a realm of about $70,000. So if that benefit was not recognized, I don't know. I can't say that it wasn't recognized, but it wasn't valued to Rondis to the extent that. I think that from their angle, it seems that there were some concerns internally that the port wasn't originally supposed to be making money off of that property, is the way it was represented to me. It wasn't, so the idea was, okay, you guys go ahead and hang on to it, and then the storage idea came up later on or something like that. I don't know. I'm talking about history that I wasn't here for.
I'd argue that we weren't supposed to pay it either. We paid it for that.
Right.
I mean, you can't Oregon money for that too, so that's a big deal also.
Yeah, I mean, all of those are things that we mentioned, but and like I said, when it comes down to it right now, if we wanted to hang on to it, it would mean that we're going to have to, we're going to have to shave off a percentage of the revenue that we make on storage and pass that to them, and then they would be making,
Yeah, sorry.
I think also there was a little bit of the bad guy syndrome. They didn't want the fishermen to think they were bad guys taking away their storage, that we could work something out. And then we re-signed the lease and everything to the June 25th, that would have to be vacated. And they haven't come up with any other lease ideas. And so, I can understand they don't want to be looked at as a bad guy taking that away. But I agree that we got to take care of our own. And there's going to be a lot of that with them. They're not bad guys. There's just going to be a lot of them trying to figure out what to do with their own property, and I see that they're going to find lots of uses for a paid piece of property when they start doing their build-out. And so I think that, we need to know yes or no, and the June 25th deadline's right, that we know, and nothing has come up to change it. And as far as this question of paving that, and if there's money this year, is a wonderful thing, because that's kind of new ground. That used to be more tree-like, and so it doesn't have a nice base like they can put the heavy outrigger racks on the rest of this lot, because it is a much more tamped down area that is unpaved. And so to get that use of that looser gravel area back there is huge, and Don and everybody are making plans to, of course, get rid of some of the old stuff. There won't be as much stored, but, those outrigger stands that they're making are just definitely a space saver. And that got me thinking maybe Don and Company, looking at our own property, being more efficient with it instead of free-for-all on that 2 acres, we might start thinking of ways to, maybe we should store the gear by season and not by vessel. Like store the shrimp here with the shrimp here, store the crab here with the crab here, so that there's like items that are bulky and weird to move, positioned well. So it's just so on again, off again with that 2 acres that we have a lease, we know that on the 25th of June changes. And so I myself would just like to see it settled, and it seems that.
Well, I'll jump into here. One of the things, I see where you're going with this, Aaron, for sure. I think the question is this the right time from a financial perspective to be doing this? We just carved down our capital improvements lists by a pile. Could we use this same 86K and carry it forward and do a few more of these capital projects that landed on the cutting room floor, if you will? To say that we have money left in our budget this year, factual, but it doesn't mean that we have to spend it. We can carry some of this forward to accommodate some of the capital projects, whether they've been outlined in the strategic business plan or that may have a higher priority in the overall operation, and look at this project more specifically when we've had a chance to really nail down what the Rhondas really wants to do with this. I kind of feel like we might be putting this a little bit the cart before the horse if we don't know exactly, a little bit more formally, and sit down with Rhondas and say, hey, what are you guys going to do? What's our flexibility? What kind of lease agreements? I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of junk out there that needs to be pared down.
It's being paid for.
Yeah, they're paying for it, but somebody at some point, people are going to be like,
intervention?
Well, Don's working through that.
like a Hoarders episode or
Don's
something.
been working with people on that.
But my point is,
There's stuff being moved out already.
it's sort of defining the problem a little better. Before, I feel a little unnerved about saying, here's $86,000, go pave up the back lot back there, when the last meeting, we carved out half of our capital project because we don't have enough money left to keep our unrestricted cash fund balance where we need it to be.
I think the challenge for Don is that he won't be able to store this gear if he doesn't have more asphalt.
But he might not need to even move it if Rhondas is willing to work with us on a lease. It may not be the most financially beneficial right now, but if we're talking about raising rates out there, we may have more money and more flexibility to do a project like this once the additional revenue that we know is going to come in from all the increases that we're talking about out there, and the users that are using that we're going to generate a lot more money. Is that a better time for this? Are we creating a crisis here by saying, we got to do this now, as opposed to saying, yeah, for a year it might not be as financially beneficial as you're talking about if we have to pay a little back or we won't, it's not like we're paying back, we just won't make as much revenue per se. In lieu of dropping 86 grand and tabling some of these other projects that have been identified as capital priorities.
Well,
just out of curiosity, Commissioner,
I
and
agree
then
with,
we'll get.
I agree with Aaron because we maintain the revenue, we maintain the control. And it's just hard for me to argue against those two things. That's what I come back to.
The control.
We have the area. We know we can use it for what we want to. If we use their area tomorrow, the next day they can say, well, we're going to use it for something else. We're also getting tight on space out there, and this would increase the space and pay back into the head.
We would have to enter into something more formal with Rhondas if we were to continue to utilize some of that space. I wouldn't advocate that we just.
well, you mentioned we'd have to sit down with them and figure out what their plan is with the space and things like that. That's what we've been doing. And if you think back to what my conversations have sounded like when I've come in and I've said, oh, we're going to have the gear storage area, and then we're not going to have it, and then we're going to have it again, and we're not going to have it. That's not because I was changing my mind, that's because Rondis has been changing their plans as they go, because they're reacting to what opportunities are available. So we've negotiated this thing with them down to the point where I think it is about control. If we go to the table and we say, boy, we got to have this gear storage area because we can't afford to do anything else, that's not a very good bargaining position for us to be in.
Well, I mean, I guess I play a little bit of devil's advocate, but whether the folks that are using that facility rent it or rent that space, whether Rondis rents it or we rent it, I'm not sure what we're bargaining for.
We're trying to hang on to our revenue that we make off of the storage, which is our main revenue stream there right now. So we want to hang on to that, is what I believe, and we want to have as much control over the storage operation as we can have. Putting it on our property gives us both of those things.
And like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I guess it's a question of timing and spending this $86,000 and saying, well, that's a higher priority than some of these other things. I mean, 86 is not a trivial amount. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that dropped off our list that are less than $86,000. I mean, again, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with any of this. It's a question of timing on this as well. And, these guys flip-flopping around, I mean, they are still we've got to work with them. It just seems strange that we couldn't, can we propose something to them and say, listen, you guys might want to switch around, and here's what we want to do. We want to lease this space back. And I don't know, I'm not in their discussions that you had, but I don't, like I said, it's a lot of money is where I'm going with it.
It's not going to get any cheaper.
But we might have more revenue. We're talking about better utilization. We're going to be focused on developing more revenue streams out at the terminal. We're talking about increasing the rates on the vessels that are out there by almost 70%. I know I'm assuming that's all in our next budget, but there's other opportunities that might present some money to help do some of this, as opposed to dropping $86,000 right now.
We can certainly reach out to Evan and let him know that we'd like to negotiate a lease for that space and see what
he said.
The terms are. We can certainly do that.
And we can give him a deadline. Say, hey, we're working on things right now. What?
Yeah, the deadline is the end of June when the property goes back to him. So we got to go fast if we're going to do that.
And I think it would be just and I know it sounds like you've been back and forth with the guy quite a bit.
Go ahead. I'll wait, please.
Yeah, I know you've been going back and forth with him, but the port did that to him too for a long time. We're not totally innocent in terms of us going, well, we're going to get back leases, and it took a long time. Sometimes these things take a little bit, but I think when we put a bookend on it and say, listen, we need to have some answers here, let's carve out something that would be financially agreeable to both of us, so we're not losing as much. Might buy us a little more time, and we can take $86,000 and put it back into some of these capital projects that are staring us in the face. But that's my comment.
Right. Okay. So I agree. We peeled off a lot of meaningful projects from the capital improvement list that we put on our capital facilities plan that could be done for $86,000. I don't quite understand the whole Rondé lease property as well as I think Aaron does, so I'm going to defer to him on that. But if we lay down flat at maximum capacity, it's like 14 years of return on investment on that $86,000, right? That's a long time. Granted, if we stack stuff, it's going to be paid off cheaper than that or quicker than that. But I would encourage, if we even are getting more estimates, $4.30 a square foot for asphalt is way up there. So that must mean there's at least a lot of improvement to be done back there, but I know I've paid half that recently. So the estimate seems high. I agree with Stuart that we're putting away some stuff that we've been talking about, or you guys have been talking about for years, for something that's really just coming up. So there needs to be some really sense of urgency, which I hear from you, so I don't discredit that at all, but there's some of that stuff on the capital improvement list has been on the books for a long time, and it's like, okay, so all of a sudden we can't do the road seawall because we're going to pave something. So we need to maybe talk about it more, because it's a lot of money for a little revenue. Granted, we're losing revenue there, and that's the piece I don't quite have a grasp on, that element. But it's not, we'll make $6,200 if every inch of that is covered in a year next year. Okay. 31 cents a foot.
You said $6,200, right? And I got
31 cents a foot at 20,000 square feet. I definitely could have done the math on it, not a strong point, but it seems like a long time for return on investment.
We're currently generating $166,000, or projected to generate $166,000 in lot storage next year.
What goes away from Rodney's versus what can be generated here? Right?
Yeah.
This piece doesn't add up to me.
Yeah.
I know it's not ideal, but can we actually store some of this gear on compacted gravel or in that dirt area? I mean, I know it's not ideal, but is it physically possible to do some of that?
some of it, yeah. Some of it not.
And I've got a forklift stuck in soft dirt too, so.
So my 2 cents would be, we just zeroed out a bunch of our contingencies. There's nothing wrong with carrying money over into next year's budget. The road seawall was one of our top priorities, and we basically knocked that off the list. 86,000 to pay for almost all of that. I think right now, dealing with one of our second largest leaseholder, that's what was stated tonight, we need to make sure that we should put a good effort in and show that we are doing our due diligence as a good landlord. And if that's where that money goes, so be it. We also have $126,000 we're going to do for the annex. We showed much bigger potential for return on investment for that money. And if we need to lease it, we might have to adjust the storage rates accordingly. But I don't think that just because we have $86,000 left over now doesn't mean we should carry it over next year or address our strategic business plan list instead.
So if we had the annex done, would we be getting a lot more money per visitor over there than we are now?
It's hard to forecast that because I don't know what the design's going to look like in the end. I don't know how many more spaces we could add. All those things we got to determine yet. So
Right.
The assumption is it would increase revenue.
Right. Well, we know it would be full.
Yeah.
There's a 10-year loan for this place that we can off for 6 years.
Well, can I generically say that maybe we need a little bit more information before we move forward on this? We need a recommendation here. I think, at the very least, Aaron, I would say, again, I'll paraphrase what I'm thinking, everyone's thinking here, on some level. Let's try again with Rhonda's.
okay.
See if you can work out at least some kind of a lease agreement, whether it's short-term, long-term, some kind of profit sharing if that's what they want to do, or flexibility in the lease, whatever the case may be. And it sounds like maybe whether Jim's comment about a little bit concerns about the cost of the project, perhaps maybe a confirmation on that price again. And I don't want to speak for the whole board and say we got to put this money somewhere else unless that's what the board wants to do. I'm trying to keep it a little bit aligned here. I think regardless, we still need to talk to Rhonda's and nail down this lease since it's coming up about what we're going to do with this gear. If we have to move it all with dirt storage, I think it's a looming issue we got to sort out anyway. It goes to this issue, but does the commission feel strongly enough at this point that we want to retain this fund focus on capital projects, or do you want to hear more before we make that determination? Jeff?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this has budget implications. Budget would
It's
say,
at 86, the investment of 86K.
yeah, if we were to move something around. Would it also have budget implications for if we get less lease revenue, it would show less revenue? So it wouldn't be like we would be able to move that 86 somewhere. If we don't pay, then we also have to reduce our
Right.
lot storage revenue.
Well, we could still move some stuff onto that dirt area. True.
Some stuff, but to sit here and be able to tell you that I know exactly what the square, it's all a question of what the percentage comes out to be. If they want us to do profit sharing, and there's a point where it doesn't make sense economically. If they want to cut into our revenues so much that it doesn't, there's a point where it doesn't make sense. So it depends on what that percentage works out to be.
We'd have to get a sense of what they're willing to negotiate, and we'd have to get a sense of how much we might be able to store in that area.
Well, do we have a sense of how much is going to be removed out of there just because it's old gear that, as Sarah was saying, they are going to, that's going to reduce our income anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, it would. It would.
Regardless of if nothing changed, we're going to
Right.
make less revenue because people are cleaning up the site.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Oh, I don't think there's any empty space that would be empty.
So in comparison, my rough fuzzy math, to pave, to improve, pave, do the mitigation to 9 acres, and so gravel it, compact it, pave it, is our own in Berger Abrams estimate is a little over $1 a square foot versus 4.3. So if nothing else, this estimate's really high.
See, I don't know. I gotta go because I got a graph on my bulletin board in my office that gives me rough figures on asphalt,
Right.
and I don't know what the thickness is, but I mean,
Some things to be.
it depends on what you're driving on it and stuff like that. But $4 is kind of that's a very standard figure for us in a lot,
It's like 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Depending on the thickness, right? But then our estimate for our capital improvement plan or at the 9 acre site is really low. So it might be something we want to look at there.
I haven't done that much work on that figure, so I can't sit here and talk about that figure in a very informed way. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there any drainage issues? I know there are drainage issues out at the terminals. Would that be part of the 86 to deal with some of that?
It would be to straighten it out a little bit. It's gonna roll off to the into that ditch that's to the north of it is the way it would be.
Right. And does that have to be permitted, looked at?
No, it doesn't require any permitting. We can get in there and get it done. But in any case, we just got.
That would help a drainage problem that's back there. It's pretty bad.
Well, right now we got to give some direction here, and it's seeming like I think we've got a few choices here. We can authorize them to move forward with 86K. I think we can talk a little bit more with Rhonda's and have you come back to the commission again and update us on things, or we can say, hey, we need to repurpose this 86K to the strategic business planning priorities. Do people see how the commission feels? I try to summarize it a little bit. Anybody, you want to pick one, or is it that I pick one?
Good for you.
Yeah.
Would we want to ask that Aaron and Terry kind of look at all those options and maybe bring back what different options would be in budget implications and at the budget meeting, or is that too late? Does it need to be decided before the budget meeting?
Needs
have
to-
the budget?
Yeah, it could be an option that we present to the budget committee to look at, that this is the proposed budget, but here's an option. My concern is that without having some level of negotiations with Rhonda's, we don't really know what our playing field looks like in terms of revenues and expenses related to storage at the terminal. And so making decisions about any money that might be added to our beginning fund balance on line 1 of the budget it's I mean, I think it's a little premature to decide how you're going to spend that before we know how our other expenditure and revenue impacts are going to sort of play out.
So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Ideally, if we had all the time, we'd say, just like Jeff said, go out, get a little more information, let's define the problem a little better and some viable options. But the practicality of it is we're up against the wall in terms of doing something. Any other? Jim?
I'll stick to what I said. I don't think we should steer from the strategic business plan unless it's an emergency. I mean, I trust these guys very much, and I just don't want to steer away from those other priorities that are set forth. Otherwise, why make priorities that are set forth?
Okay. Jeff, any parting thoughts on this? Walter?
The priorities.
What do we mean by sticking to what priorities?
Strategic business plan.
Whether it's
Things we
So that
we
86
cut.
stays in the budget.
Yeah.
Carrying forward.
Unless it's an emergency situation.
Okay, well, when storage becomes an emergency, we can talk about it.
Exactly.
That's a great time to do
It's sounding like, and I
it. No, I mean, I agree with the
Right.
consensus
We'd
here.
be doing ourselves a disservice if all of a sudden rogue seawall became an emergency when we're talking about it for 5 years. Or
Right.
whatever the next thing down, right?
I think I tend to agree.
MO on that whole thing, I guess. Yeah, I think it's a well thought out, definite kind of stick with keeping the money.
All right, I think that's the direction you're getting from the commission right now is let's hang on to this money, add it to your budget, carry it forward till next year, or I guess not. We're not ready to invest $86K in the payment at this point, is what the consensus is. How you work that $86K back into
It's already assumed that it's being carried forward. We already assume we're not spending it this fiscal year, so I don't, that's why I'm reluctant to say you've got $86,000 new dollars. Because I think Mark's already anticipated that those projects that we weren't doing aren't going to be done, and that money's carrying forward. So I think your beginning balance is kind of what it is.
so we need to keep the course.
So we'll negotiate with Rondis. Is that, we're hearing that
That's the direction.
for a lease on that space? Okay, we'll do that post haste because we need to
All right.
get that resolved.
Any other discussions on this? I think it's a good discussion, but Karen, I appreciate you're looking out for the bottom line on this thing too.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of improvements we don't need to make upgrades, so. Okay, staff reports, accounting supervisor.
There's a brief report that Mark included in the packet, and unfortunately he's not able to be here, but it really just talks about getting back to some other projects that have been put on hold while he and Beck have been working on the budget. So the month-end close and financial reports you should have as of March 31st. That's not right. This is April. I think
Must be May.
Right, we talked about that.
April 30th.
Well,
That's today.
Yeah, I think it probably might be next week.
Yeah.
Or is he just talking about closing out March?
No, I think he's,
This was what he promised us to get back because he didn't have the financial.
right, and I think you'll have it in a couple weeks, I think is what, I think that, and so you see what he's working on there. So, and in conjunction with day-to-day, we've got to get this package together, and by May 7th. So we've got a budget message that I'm working on in addition to a number of other fine-tuning things in there. So
All right, anybody have any questions or comments about the update yet? Good. Let's move into Director of Ops report.
Before I get started, I just realized your mistake, Jim, on your math, is that's a monthly rate, so you got to multiply that $6,400 times 12, and then, yeah, so it's a big difference there. That's been chewing me up. I was like, no, so that payment does pay for itself in a very short time period, very short. In fact, the first year it adds like $74,000 of revenue if you lease all of it, so significant. So I got an abbreviated report because I've been out on baby leave.
Thank you.
That changes that whole scenario quite a bit.
It does.
So we'll go ahead and do the direction, but that's a lot of money. In any case, I've been out on baby leave, and so this is pretty short. The north side of the bay is pretty full. Wharfage from Squid so far has brought us in about $28,000 to $30,000. That doesn't count truck fees, doesn't count labor, doesn't count any of the other fees that we're getting square footage from those guys yet. It hasn't really been very heavy. They've had some issues because of weather. There's this time of year the current runs, the longshore current is causing some problems getting the fish on board. And then I also heard that some of them had kind of blown in down here by Cape Perpetua where they can't fish for them right now. So they haven't been able to really bring in the 100 tons a day is a realistic figure for us. We have three pumps down here. So if the weather comes around and the longshore current stops kicking their hindquarters, then we may see more than that coming in. So $30,000 of revenue so far on wharfage, and that's probably about 7 days of operation or so. Did a lot of work on budget preparations and communicating these changes and researching changes in rates and things like that. That took up a lot of my time. We talked about the Skyline sheet metal thing. Hosted a meeting with FEMA this month to discuss disaster preparedness for the region.
Homeland Security.
Sorry, Homeland Security.
Should have been FEMA.
But the county and the city planning officials were there too. I got nothing new to report from Community Ice right now. And then you'll see the attached letter from EDA saying that our grant request has moved to the next level. And they came back late last week and asked for some additional information. And so I have half of that done right now, and I'll be done with it here in the next couple of days or so. And that's all I've got to report. Oh yeah, this just came in today. Right before we went to the parking meeting this afternoon. The Port of Toledo, I talked with them a couple weeks back, and they just put in this special use permit. We did this last year, this Teak Lady Sail event they do from the Port of Toledo out to here. There's a handful of these old wooden boats that are about 10 to 15 feet in length. They sail them out, moor them at Port Dock 3 for Friday night, and then they have people come down, take a look at the boats, and they take them back on Saturday. I talked to Kent, and he said that he's got the room. It would be easier if the shrimp boats were out shrimping right now, but they haven't agreed on a price yet. So the marina is still really full, and I'd recommend approval of this thing. This is what we did last year. We just didn't have them do a permit for it because it was such a small thing. So that's this thing happens on May 23rd and take down on May 25.
And there's an insurance clause.
Yeah, that's right. They cover, so they're in compliance with all of our insurance requirements.
So they'll list us as additional insurance.
That's right.
I did see a bunch of new shiny equipment getting offloaded to Community Ice today.
Exciting.
Shiny.
So Aaron, do you need, that wasn't part of the packet, you want us to, while we have it now, I don't know, you don't need the endorsement from the commission for special use permits, but
I can sign it. We wanted you to know about it, and if there was an issue, we wanted
exactly.
And Bud was just a little slow getting it. That's why it wasn't in the packet.
So does anyone have any comments or concerns with the special use permit going forward?
Little boats.
Okay,
Tell Bud to
great.
speed up a little.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Okay, any other comments for Aaron on his report? All right, so let's move into the RV Park Recreational Marina report. Anything, comments?
I don't think we got nothing additional there for me.
Any reason why the annex jumped up 30%?
I'd have to talk to Bill some more about it.
Was there an event or something with that? Oh, contractors? seemed like a pretty big jump from what happened last year.
Rich guy.
Oh,
The bridge guy.
Rich guy.
okay. So, no comments from anybody on the RV park and recreational area? General manager's report.
I just have a brief report. So the strategic business plan, I mentioned this earlier, we will have it by the 10th, and then I will bring it, well, Paula will bring it to the meeting on the 28th for your approval, and we will then forward it to Business Oregon for their consideration and peer review and ultimately approval, and then the IGA will be negotiated. So just an update on that Director of Finance and Business Services. We didn't complete the hire because the candidate wanted way too much money. And so as I think I told you, I've been talking with Paula about some options. And then I heard from the city manager in Toledo that they had just hired for a budget manager position, and he had a candidate that he thought was good, and he sent that candidate's information, and turns out that it's someone who had worked with Paula, and so she knows about this candidate. So we're talking about we would have to reopen a recruitment for a period of time so that we could interview this person. So we're talking about doing that. Brandon Kryman, I think is how she pronounces her name, from the Maritime Administration came out, and she was doing her sort of West Coast tour of facilities. They're really focused on trying to, I think all these federal agencies are supposed to be streamlining, becoming more efficient, and working more cooperatively with their stakeholders. And we've heard that from the Corps of Engineers and from the folks at NOAA, and I don't know if ports will say they're seeing great results of the streamlining effort, but I've heard nothing but people saying there's lots of delays in getting permits. But in any event, Brandon came out and I gave her a tour. Aaron was off, and so we toured the terminal, and she's very interested in commercial fishing, and the agency is very interested in looking at commercial fishing in a different way than they have in the past. In the past, they really are interested in cargo only, and so I don't know what will come of the internal conversations they're having at MARAD about that right now, but she said we're really looking at these ports that have substantial commercial fishing operations in addition to cargo. So that could be a very interesting set of new ideas that comes out of that. So the board practices assessment that you all participated in on April 2nd, I attached, and that's in your packet. I know, Jeff, you had some questions and you have some comments about that. So let me just finish this and then we can go to that. The one piece that will come in 6 months is Rob will schedule time to come back and sort of check in on things that you indicated were caution or danger areas where you needed to do some or add some focus. And SDAO just requires that in the process for us to get the credit for this best practice program. And so that'll be probably September, October-ish. And then I just really want to acknowledge Mark's work and Becca's work with this process of the budget. I mean, it is unimaginable the hours that these folks have put in. I mean, everybody has contributed to this, but Mark and Becca have worked a ton, and they have really tried to standardize forms. And I think this year you made big steps in terms of forms being standardized, and that relieved some of the work and trouble they had last year. And next year will be even better, and they're really helping the port have accurate numbers to forecast with. And I mean, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's as bad as it's not great to be either generating a tremendous amount more of revenue than what you thought you were projecting based on, unless you've had some unusual things occur. And so being as accurate as you can be is extremely valuable. So thank you, Becca. And I'll thank Mark again when I see him. And so we have next steps with the budget committee meeting on the 14th at 6 o'clock in this room. We will be sending out the notice of that meeting on the 1st of May. It's all very structured in the budget law. And on the 7th, there will be a packet that will go to the entire budget committee. And the second meeting date that we're still holding, if needed, is May 21st at 6 p.m. And then the budget would come for budget hearing and approval at the June 25th commission meeting. So, any questions about any of that?
So when I saw the board assessments, I looked through there and everything, the comments and the ratings, pretty much like I remembered it, except I looked at soundness of financial practices, and it showed caution and danger, so I actually went back and listened to the recording. And the only person who spoke on that was Walter, and I thought he characterized things pretty well. And nobody else spoke, I think probably because he characterized them. We moved on, and Walter said medium green, which was good. We went on from there, but then I saw it's shown as caution and danger, so I'm wondering if that's actually a mistake. Especially considering the rest of the ratings and comments were pretty much reflective of the meeting, but this one section is not reflective of the meeting. So I just wanted to point that out for what it's worth.
I'll communicate that back to Rob so he can adjust that.
Any other comments for Gary at this point?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Gary.
Yep. How exciting.
Next item on our agenda, commissioner reports and comments. I have a couple updates for y'all, but Tim, I'll just go around and say anything.
Nothing.
Yeah. Anything that you represented the commission?
With the commissioners roundtable and met the administrators, both of them, community leaders, and very well attended. I think you did a good job of talking about the pending legislation, and talked about the maintenance tax. I didn't see much officials. He heard us, and it was a good meeting.
Sarah, anything you want to?
I went to Salem, I went to the fishery roundtable, I went to the leadership roundtable with Schrager, and I've had my fill of all of that for at least 6 months.
Duly noted. Yeah, I'll just chime in a little bit on the House Bill 2284. The videos are available if you want to go back and look at how the presentations went. I think, well, nobody has a crystal ball at this point, but I think there was, a case made for at least a delayed or implementation of this bill to the point where I think it would stay in committee for now and perhaps be revisited in 12 months or 24 months, something like that. So, but again, I think it was good representation. I appreciated Sarah going with me up there for that as well. So I'm going to call it positive. I think we've done our best foot forward as a board. I attended the Vision 2040 committee meeting last week, and they're focused on right now the Ford Family Foundation. They're going to have a Vision Through Action tour where some representatives from that group as well as from other parts of the state are going to go around and look at various different house cities and small towns are dealing with certain issues. Somebody from this Vision 2040 committee will be a part of that. Not me. So, I know it was tough, but I'll reserve a little bit of time before we jump into public comments for anything anybody else would like to comment about our GM. But let me, before we move into that, I want to quickly go through some of these calendars.
and then we can move into that. So as you can see, I won't read all of them, but we have one of the days coming up, as Terry mentioned. First budget committee meeting, May 14th at 6 p.m. We have a number of events happening. Next regularly scheduled commission meeting is May 28th. And I don't have anything else to add to that. Again, before we get into public comment, anybody want to have anything else they'd like to say? I know I do. I'll just say real quick. How much, as a board president, I appreciate all the efforts that Terry's gone through. We've commented a number of times on how well the staff has been doing with a lot of projects, but I think that also is a testament to the calming approach and the professionalism that you've brought to that staff. It's not lost, I think, certainly on anybody in this commission or anybody in this town or district. So, we'll have another chance to catch up, Terry, but I wanted to personally just thank you well for, I thoroughly enjoyed working with you, and I hope our paths will cross again.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll second that.
Motion passes.
Yeah. Thank you for being a very stabilizing force. You got here just shortly after I did. I'm sort of starting to move forward, and you very much helped that process of moving them forward. So we have a long way to go, but we wouldn't be here today without you. So thank you.
You got here during a time of transition on many levels. Many things going on, from the bill at the state to just lots of things, and just the skill set and the experience and the qualities you brought to the job, the professionalism, and just the way you dealt with staff, community, stakeholders, officials, commission, just really helped us through the transition, and really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I will agree with what Jeff and Jim said. The only thing I would like to add is it's been a pleasure working with you, Terry. Look forward to maybe working in the future at some other time. For someone who didn't know a lot of course, you should have got to speed really quick and then a technical job. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sarah.
I would like to add, too, that I agree with my fellow commissioners, and we were kind of not seeing eye to eye back in the day, and I know that you did bring a lot of professional, staid, calm, actually good sense of humor was very helpful, and it's just good. We just appreciated everything you've done, and no good deed is left unpunished, so you got it all with your time here at the commission, and it's been great to have you to work with. It's just been, you've been, like one of my friends said, gosh, it's just like you've been here the whole time. You just are part of the community.
Oh,
and so, yeah, looking forward to seeing you out there as a citizen.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you.
anyway,
Thank
we
you
do
very much.
have a little card. here.
Oh my God. Is there a big check in it? Thank you so
I wonder what that was down there. I was going to ask you what kind of plant those were.
Thank you.
I thought maybe you'd like a picture of all of us, too.
Wow, really?
The answer is yes.
Okay, the answer is yes. So I just have to say that when I came to the port, I had listened to lots of audio meetings, and I was like, holy cow, what am I doing now? And I have to say that this has been as fun and as fulfilling for me. I mean, it's beyond my expectations, and it has, I mean, such nice comments, and thank you so much. But I have to say, back at you, this has been great. And I have loved, I have loved being part of this community and meeting the good folks of this community and the staff. I told you I wasn't going to do this. No, but the staff are so flippin' amazing. Yeah, really. Oh, it's raining. And it is such an amazing amount of work that they create.
create and not that they create, but they handle, and that they do it with grace, and it's constant pressure, and this staff is amazing. So it's been great, and thank you. And you know, I have a condo just at the end of the street down there, and once we get it remodeled, I'll have you all over for a drink. We're not done
We
yet.
already told the people.
Oh, did you already? Not as a core. I'll have you like, we'll break you up into smaller groups.
Public too at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. It'll just be a public social event. But thank you very much. It has been fun. And Paula is going to be a rock star. You guys are going to love her. And you all have to welcome her with big warm arms and be her backstop and keep her moving forward, because she's stepping into, I think, extremely high expectations. The phone is ringing. Look at Karen. Don't break. The phone is ringing off the hook with people like, when does Paula start? What is her email? When can I make an appointment with her? When can I interview her? I mean, it is, people have this huge expectation that Paula is going to come and solve everything. And so just really, really prop her up and welcome her and be supportive. You guys have done that for me, and so I hope I didn't wear you out. So continue to do that for her, and thank you. It's been great.
All right, thank you.
Picture time. Who
Well,
wants to be the-
let's finish our meeting here. So. Next item on the agenda is a public comment. If anybody in the public would like to make a comment, please state your name. You have 3 minutes to do so. Yes, Mark Goble.
City Council. Terry, I'll join the commission in saying, you know, you've done a wonderful job. I don't know who was responsible for getting you here. I think the commission was very smart in hiring you. But I think that House bill was on its way through, and I think your leadership kind of calmed the waters, and whatever you did, I think it's your effort that really refocused the legislation and legislators into maybe taking a look at the present commission and working with the present commission in the present format. Because I think there was a lot of energy for the state to move in and take over. And I think whatever you did, whatever leadership you did, I think was wonderful for that. So you're to be commended for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's not from the city council. That's
I appreciate it.
my own personal view. The other thing I wanted to say, there is on May 10th, there's a video town hall with Tom Berger and Rutland at the Oregon Coast Community College. And that maybe some of you will attend that. I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion. I think there's quite a few counselors that are probably going to go there too, and so I think it's a time to kind of bless them for what we want. So anyway, that's all I have. But in general, I think I like what I'm seeing with the commission, and it's so much different than a year ago. And the budget discussion was nice.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
I'll be quick also. Jim Klein. I echo exactly what you said about no, seriously. And the team will be celebrating John Myers' 30th anniversary brewing beer here at Newport. It's his first brew over on the Bay Pub. We're having a little festival over here. And for all you guys that are here, first beer's on me. Just the first one? Yeah, just the first one. Okay. I know somebody needs to be thirsty.